think we're here today to try and inform as many veterans as we can. We're here with Dr. Bash.
Welcome, Radio Land, TV Land, and YouTube viewers and listeners. This is Dr. Craig Bash. I've been doing veterans medical opinions for 30 years, and I have dozens and dozens of these radio shows which we're going to publish on this YouTube channel, and number 1 through whatever. So thank you for listening, and here we go.
Dr. Bash, how you doing today? It sounds like you had a lot of trouble out there. Doggone, I hate to hear that. You're in California there right now. I hope you can get to work through that mess.
Yeah, I had that big firestorm, lost a bunch of records and part of our office. But one of the things we're working on that I see a lot these days has to do with reduction of benefits. Are you guys seeing a lot of that reduction stuff going on? Patients talk about it?
It seems as though I've heard a lot of veterans talking. It seems as though every time they reach 100% disability rating through the VA, the VA switches around and automatically goes into this reduction mode. Any simple thing, anything they can find that will give them an excuse to reduce your ratings, your 100% especially. It seems as though they really latch onto that and they're aggressive in making a poor veteran's life miserable after he's went through all the hoopty-raw to even get his rightful benefits or their rightful benefits. And it's something that shouldn't be going on, but yes, we've heard of veterans in that situation. It's not nice.
Yeah, it seems like about 20% of my work now is reductions. Like a patient will get 100%, and then they'll VA must have some kind of internal audit system, and all of a sudden, 2 or 3 weeks later, they'll come through and they'll say, nope, that's wrong, I made a mistake, and they'll reduce them back down. And
they got a quality. That's the quality assurance step. I think that's the way to claim that goes to the quality assurance hand. During the people look at it and they kind of reconfirm it, or either they will see if there's a mistake or see if they can reduce it. They will. It's just a bureaucratic quality assurance thing, and they'll try to do it with a lot of people. I've seen it's increased tremendously in the past 6 months anyway.
I think that's right. Like I said, maybe every fifth case I do now is a reduction case.
Mm-hmm.
And so I see them like in the first 3 weeks or a month after they get 100%, or I see people that had 100% for a while and all of a sudden they come at them with a reduction. Or I also see a lot of these cases that are like, guys are on the fringe for TDIU, so they'll come at them maybe with 40% or 50% or 60%, stuff like that.
That's just like
I think Bill Krieger's trying to call in. He's trying to call me another number.
Okay.
But so anybody on the fringe of
he should have email with information on that. I'll send him a copy of it. So if he needs a call-in number,
he's on the fringe of.
The call-in number real quick is the call-in number, Gerald. 347.
Oh, the call-in number is 347-237-4819. Now, this call-in number, once again, is 347-237-4819, and then a lady will talk and you hit number 1, and that'll put you in the queue with us, and we can pick you up there if you have a question or a comment.
Yeah, so they're coming out, all these patients that are on the fringe of TDIU too, so they're kind of undercutting the foundation for the 100% later on.
Yeah, I don't know why they do that. I guess there are some veterans that they feel like they're overrated instead of underrated, and some of them don't put up a fight, though, Doctor. That's the trouble. They take it, and instead of fighting with them. If you're entitled benefits, doggone it, you ought to get them. That's my feeling.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of stuff. Yeah, you're right. They're doing a lot of stuff with the veteran. The VA's kind of bluffing the veteran. So, for example, when Bill gets on, we got a case we can talk about. But, patients they'll get a letter and they're supposed to wait like 60 days, for that. The next level of rules for the reduction. They'll send letters out like at 55 days and 59 days, and they'll do these reductions without reviewing the record, or they'll do the reductions without doing the exam. All the different steps that they're supposed to go through for the reduction process that Bill's going to talk to us about in a little bit, they just skip over and they bluff the veteran. So the veteran, all of a sudden, next thing he knows, his check's cut, and he's like, "What happened?"
I believe Bill's here now.
You there, Bill?
Am I in?
Yeah, you're here.
Hey!
Well,
welcome, Bill.
Why, thank you. Sorry for being late. I was struggling like crazy to get in here.
Yep. So, Bill, I gave a little preamble about the cases I'm seeing. Like I'm seeing these 100% that get reduced like in 3 or 4 weeks, or the TDIU Foundation cases that are like 40% or 60%, stuff like that. And I told them about how the VA is kind of bluffing the veterans, like they're giving them reductions with 55 days or 59 days, or they're not doing exams, they're not doing the steps that they're supposed to go through. And I told them that you might be able to, we have that one case that we talked about that we just did recently, or you might be able to give us some of the legal points about how the different steps are supposed to go through for reduction,
Yes. And I took the time today to check for any updates in the manual or changes, and I see this part of the manual M21 had revisions in April of this year and late November and September as well. Now, I think that the manual now reasonably represents the intent of the law that protects veterans from, one, premature reductions, establishes the standards that must be satisfied before a reduction can be implemented, and provides a 60-day period prior to the reduction. And Congress enacted that part to give the veteran 60 days to adjust to his reduced income. So the 60-day notice.
I told them
that
I've seen a lot. Oh, yes. I told them I've seen about 20% of my workload now has to do with reductions. The manual doesn't say reduce everybody, does it?
No.
All right.
In fact, a typical reduction is entered by a rater because the rater believes that the veteran's condition has improved and no longer satisfies the requirements for the higher reduction. Well, what happens typically, the veteran has some issue pending, maybe a claim for unemployability, and he claims a specific disability is causing his problem with employment. Manual requires then that we examine that disability. That examination report gives us a snapshot. It says how far the joint bends, typically, and how far the doctor can bend it. And then based on that alone, that exam report comes back in, and it no longer satisfies the requirement for the higher evaluation. So the rater then decides, oh, well then I have to reduce the evaluation And in most cases, we are now seeing that 60-day notice happening. But remember, that only applies if it affects money. So if a rating is going to reduce a single disability, but it does not affect the combined evaluation, the 60-day notice is not required. Similarly,
So I see a lot of that, Bill. I see a lot of that.
Yeah,
This is a practical example.
we see that.
I see a lot like a guy going for his ankle. They'll go in for his ankle, and they'll increase his ankle and they'll decrease his knee at the same time, or put his knee into a strain instead of an arthritis and not change his rating, right? That's what we're talking about.
Some of that is going on, and the regulations and the manual accurately instruct that you do not arbitrarily change a diagnostic code assigned to a disability based on a simple finding on an examination. You must review all of the evidence, and of course, protection applies. If a veteran, for whatever reason, by error or otherwise, has been, say, service-connected for arthritis of the spine, let's say, and that grant has been in effect for 10 years, that grant of service connection is protected, even if it's wrong. And the VA cannot sever service connection for that arthritis. Now, let's say the recent examination now comes forward with a different diagnosis, perhaps a lumbosacral strain. Okay? The available rater, the rating, it is then available to the rater to enter a decision adding lumbosacral strain to the arthritis, but they may not sever the arthritis and replace it with lumbosacral strain. And that would apply for a multitude of disabilities and diagnostic codes. Now, back to our topic of reduction, and this, we are often reminded, and the manual makes clear, that for disabilities that have been in effect for 5 years or more, there are certain requirements that must be satisfied before a reduction can be made. Now, there is also, even if a disability has been in effect for less than 5 years, there are still evidentiary standards that must be satisfied in the record before the reduction is made. One of those comes from 4.2 and 4.10 in the regulations. And basically that requirement is that an examination that you're predicating a reduction on must be as informed as the one that granted it. So if you have a more thorough examination that established a 20% evaluation, and the new examination establishes only a 10% evaluation, that subsequent examination must be as detailed as the original one. And if it's not, the reduction cannot take place. Secondly, the regulations I quoted earlier, 4.2, 4.10, make clear that even if improvement has occurred, that improvement must be shown to result in the ability to function under the ordinary conditions of life, including employment. So if a veteran has been out of the workplace and not working, how could a rater say that, well, the improvement is achieved under the circumstances of employment? That doesn't make any sense. Under the conditions, ordinary conditions of daily life, It means that the individual is active, not resting and recuperating, but actually active in their lifestyle, in the activities that they do. Okay? So I never, ever see reductions discussing those issues. And that's where these reductions fail. Most of my success, I won't say most, much of my success representing cases in the court or at the Board of Veterans' Appeals was overturning reductions because they were not made in accordance with the requirements necessary to satisfy before the reduction is done. Now, the court back in 1993 addressed this in Brown v. Brown at 5 VetApp 413 in 1993. And it's basically the court said what I just said. You've got to show that there's been a material improvement under the ordinary conditions of daily life, including employment. If you can't show that, even if the veteran's immediate examination shows improvement, that doesn't justify a reduction. Okay? That's one of the errors that I have seen most often. Now, another point. If a reduction is made and it fails to point to the evidence to justify the reduction in accordance with these rules, it is what the court calls void ab initio. Now, what does that mean? That means from the beginning, okay? And you must reverse and reinstate the evaluation. If the reduction was made in error, then you must first reinstate the evaluation before you do anything else. Then, if VA wants to pursue the question again, then they can undertake development in some cases, not every case. And if then the subsequent evidence demonstrates that a reduction is now justified, a subsequent reduction may be accomplished. But there are oftentimes disabilities that really were chronic in nature, and the subsequent development of evidence does not substantiate improvement that's material and sustained and achieved under the ordinary conditions of daily life, including employment. And so many times I found myself as a decision review officer, now that the issue has been on appeal for 5 to 10 years, reversing it and saying, here's your money, and now the effect is that your higher evaluation has been in effect for more than 5 years. We don't have 2 examinations. No future examinations are going to be justified. Keep it. I often made that decision. And it would have been much better for veterans if those raters across the country would have paused and paid attention to those rules governing reductions before effectuating it.
Bill, why do you think we have such a rash of increase in reductions? Do you think it's internal auditing, or what do you think?
No. I saw no effort on the part of central office to achieve widespread reductions as a goal. Rather, the changes that I've seen in the manual have been an effort of central office to bring all the variety of authorities into one source so that everyone works off the same page. In some cases, that's helpful. In other cases, it turns out to be harmful to the veteran because of the various authorities might have in the past permitted raters around the country to apply different interpretations. Whereas once everything becomes incorporated into the manual, it's binding on all of those employees around the country, and they must comply with what the manual instructs. Now that the manual on reductions is pretty accurate, okay, I would hope that we would see some improvement in this area, and these premature or unjustifiable reductions would decrease in number. And I hope there's training activity going on to try to make that clear.
Bill, now,
yes, sir.
Could this be like some raiders, you know, they're trying to score extra points or get a little bit larger bonus. Could this be raiders kind of going off on their own little trail here and say, hey, I'm going to try this, try that, and if I'm successful, I get some bonus points here? Or it's obvious that they're out on the limb. In other words, they're saying, look, if I can reduce this guy, I've saved this much money for the VA, and I believe I can. And use his own, instead of following the regulations to the letter as he should, or using some common sense here, that it's not a practical idea even to try to reduce someone. I mean, this is across the country. You're talking about a lot of different raiders, and they all got their own opinion.
Yeah, and the effort. Let me take you back some years. I forget the specific year, but General Accounting Office did a widespread study around the country of rating decisions, and what the data showed was that where you live in the country affects the outcome. And
I agree, yeah.
The study showed that sort of a swath across the middle, well, let me say what probably generically might referred to as the Rust Belt, from like Detroit, Chicago, Cleveland, out to Newark, New Jersey. In that, now I'm just being general, okay? I'm not being specific. But in that general vicinity of the country, your claim was less likely to be granted. And if granted, your compensation was likely to be lower than the rest of the country. So there was a disparity in geography. There was a geographical difference in the outcome. VA made a proper decision to try to reduce that inconsistency and to improve consistency across the nation by centralizing the authorities, by trying to reduce the flexibility available to individual raters around the country and trying to get everybody to march to the same music. And I witnessed massive changes in the manual where the central office was routinely going through what we used to use in the past as guidance, things like let's see, what did we used to call those? Compensation service bulletins. There were bulletins.
Fast letters.
Fast letters, yes. A lot of those kinds of documents were being used in a lot of different ways by a lot of different people around the country. And what happened was VA rescinded all of them, rescinded all these different sources of rules, and instead incorporated a short summary into what they determined to be the appropriate sections of the manual. And in this way, make it easier for the individual rater to find an authority to say, here's the guidance that applies to this type of a claim. I saw no evidence around the country, and for the years I was a decision review officer at what was now called the Appeals Resource Center. We reviewed appeals from all over the country that were remanded by the Board of Veterans Appeals for some deficiency, usually. And so I got a very broad experience with regional office decisions all over the country. And those decisions generally, when they were wrong because of a lack of understanding of either the development necessary to be accomplished before making the decision, or a lack of familiarity with the rules governing that decision. I didn't see any evidence of anyone purposely wanting to harm veterans, and there's certainly no incentive available to a rater for granting less benefits. The central office never, and as an employee, VA never evaluated me based on my percentage of grants versus denials. That was never an issue. Now, I kept track of it myself, and the software available in the VA's electronic systems gives you an opportunity to actually see how you're doing. And I was granting maybe 58 to 60% of the appeals. The office average was somewhere around 25%. That is due strictly to experience, that I just simply had a much broader and longer experience than my colleagues. And I understood facts that they didn't understand, or understood some of the court precedents that must be applied. And that's why I was able to grant more.
Thank you all for listening. That ends this show. And now I'm going to zoom off.